Hello, welcome to the Dreamers Podcast. I'm your host, Anne-Lyse Wealth, and today I am with Attiyah Blair. Attiyah Blair is a real estate investor, a multimillionaire, and she's been in real estate since she was 23 years old. Today, she's here to share with us all of the tips that she used to build her real estate empire and how she's helped her students purchased over $19 million of real estate in the past 4 years. Attiyah, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so glad to be here.
So Attiyah, do you mind sharing a little bit about you and what you do with the listeners?
Absolutely. So I'm a real estate investor. I love investing in real estate. I think it's so cool that my job helps me to build wealth for my family. So when anyone asks me about investing in real estate, I'm biased, personal bias, and just historically, it's the way to go. So I started, like you said, when I was 23. I was living in Raleigh, North Carolina at the time. I just moved there. I didn't know anybody. I moved there for work. I was working in television for 10 years before I left to be an entrepreneur. And while I was living down there in Raleigh, I said, let me buy real estate. I was always super just eager, passionate to buy real estate. I think that has something to do with the fact that my dad was a general contractor since the day I was born. And since we didn't have a lot of money growing up, daddy's job was the daycare, daddy's job was the after school program, the summer camp. So I'm just running around the houses all the time. So yeah, back in, that was 2007, I picked up my first property. I was living paycheck to paycheck, only making $32,000 a year. As a matter of fact, when I went up for my loan, because I got an FHA loan, a first time home buyer's grant, and a builder's credit with the person who built the house. It took all these things to come together for me to be able to afford this house. And they said, ma'am, you can't afford one more dollar on this loan. It was about $123,000. This was my first house. Lived in there for 11 months, left there and rented it out, or a year technically. Then I rented it out, and that was the start of my real estate portfolio. It's interesting because at the time, I never considered investing in real estate full time. I certainly never saw anybody who looked like myself doing it, but I was always so passionate about it. And even though I stayed on track with television, some years later, I just said, this is not for me, and I'm going to focus on real estate full time. And here we are. I started sharing on social media. Tons of women are like, I want to do this too. You give me hope that I can do it. And I created a program to say, come on, let me show you, create a very structured way where others can get started with real estate investing.
And so obviously you're 15 years in now. So a lot of times we focus on the result. We're not necessarily concerned about how the person got to where they are. I'm curious to hear the transition because you were in TV. How was the transition to real estate?
So I'll tell you the transition, and I'm always super transparent about this. It was rough because one, I didn't have anyone teaching me what to do. I took the time to bump my head and learn all the things that I had to learn to become successful at it. So when I first left television, I didn't go full time into real estate. I created a coaching and consulting business unrelated to real estate. And I just knew, I was like, because I was paid very well. I was a producer for NBC News. That was my last station. I said, I just know I'm going to leave, start this business, make six figures in my first year. That did not happen. It was 5 painful years of mistakes and failures and not knowing what to do. I thought if you build it, they will come. They did not come. And so what happened at that point was I'm like, okay, I know I can shut this whole thing down and go back and get a job and make $100,000 and be good with that. But I am a true entrepreneur. The thought of going back and getting a job made me sick to my stomach. So I gave myself 2 options. Either you figure this out or you figure this out. Those are my 2 options. Those are the only options I had. So I went ahead and I figured it out. And what I did was I did my first flip. So we watched the shows, right? HGTV, all those different shows. I'm like, I'm going to do that. And then I had a leg up on the competition because I've been around my dad all these years. I didn't face, because I find a lot of women that I help and support, I have to pass off my bossery or help them inherit the bossery that I feel on the job site because I got it from my dad. Just being around the job sites. When daddy's dropping me to school in the morning, his workers are hopping on the back of the truck. So these big, strong construction guys, oh, this is daddy's friends, and they give me lollipops. I was never intimidated because I know that's one of the things that keep women from getting started with real estate investing. And so I decided to do my first flip. I found a property, very basic numbers. It cost $50,000 to purchase. I put $50,000 in it to renovate it, and I was able to sell it for about $150,000. That was it. I did it. I did not make a $50,000 profit. That's what the TV shows don't show you. You have to pay taxes, realtor's fees, closing costs, holding costs. I made about between $25,000 and $30,000. That was really, really good for me. And I said, oh, I'm shutting down that other business because this is what I want to do. I felt empowered. I love the control that I had over my money because I could just do the math and say, okay, if I got $25,000 from this, I can do it this many times to get whatever amount of money I want. And that's what I did. I did it 3 more times that year. And I made $100,000 in my first year of flipping properties. I mean, it was a dream come true. And until tax time came, right? And you had to pay those taxes. So that $100,000 was not still $100,000 after I paid my taxes. And so what that did for me, because we have to remember, we're going to always face adversity. We're going to always face challenges. We have to learn from them. We have to allow those moments to make us better and not bitter. And that's what I always work to do. So in that moment, I said, okay, this is cool, but I would like to not have to pay these taxes. What can I do to make that happen? And so I totally shifted my model to a buy and hold model where I am no longer fixing up the house and selling it. I'm fixing it up and renting it. And what that does, it gives me tax breaks. It gives me tax incentives where I get to keep more money in my pocket. And so that's where I am today. And that's how I started building my multi-million-dollar portfolio.
So you said so much right now. So it's going to take a little minute to unpack here.
Okay.
So you said your first investment, you put in $50,000.
Mm-hmm.
And then how much did you spend to renovate?
50.
So it was about 100,000.
Mm-hmm.
But then you said you did that a couple more times that year. Can you
Yes.
talk? Yeah. So were you using your profits to invest in the next property? Tell me more about that.
Yeah, I was super disciplined. So I only did one at a time because that's all I could afford. Now I actually have 5 rehabs going on right now because I've really gotten good at using other people's money. But all I could afford was one at a time. And then I saved all that money and then I did it again. So literally I was rolling the money from one project to another. I was not at the mall. I was not at Louis Vuitton. I didn't go to start buying designer stuff. And this is important, right? Because people want to look rich and not be rich. I didn't start buying designer things until my net worth was at 7 figures. Super, super disciplined and just rolling the cash from one project to another.
And so
when I was 23, that was back in 2007, I purchased my first rental property. I lived in there and then moved out. That was 2007. It wasn't until 2011 that I did my first flip that I'm talking about right now. So that was a 4-year time frame. I was still working in television, saving up my money. I left in 2011.
how long did it take you to save that first 100 grand?
I didn't save the first $100,000. I leveraged other people's money. So that's one of the common misconceptions. And that's one of the things that keep people from getting started at all or waiting forever to get started because you feel like you have to come up with all that money by yourself. You can leverage business credit and get anywhere, even with a brand new LLC, anywhere between $40,000 and $100,000 to go ahead and get started for down payments, things like that. You can leverage hard money lenders. Some, if you have really good credit, a little bit of experience, they'll fund the whole thing 100%. But on average, they're giving you 75% of purchase and 100% of construction. There's so many ways to get the money. And this is what wealthy people do. When these business owners are buying whatever companies, I don't care if it's Amazon, Netflix, or something smaller like a mom and pop shop that you never heard of, they're either raising capital or getting debt. I know debt's a dirty word, right? Certainly in my household growing up, it was a dirty word. Debt is bad. If you have 0% interest, it's free money. But let's say you get a business line of credit and it's at 7%. You can get $100,000 business line of credit at 7% and it costs you about $700 a month, right? But if you are going to make 80% on your flip or 80% return on your cash, if you're doing a buy and hold deal, that money costs you nothing. Versus if you did not take that line of credit and didn't have the money at all to do the deal, you would have nothing. So it's better to have 93% and you're giving up that 7% than to have zero of nothing because you didn't have the money to do it at all.
So obviously at this point, you are an expert in real estate investing. Not everyone listening or watching the show has the experience that you have and are able to tell really, hey, if I purchase this property, you put this much money in, this is what I can expect my return to be. What are some of the ways that people who are just getting started can analyze deals?
So it depends on the strategy that you're going to use and how you're going to fund your deal. And that's a whole class. So I'm going to try to keep it as simple and easy to understand as possible. So one of the cheapest options for funding is an FHA loan. It stands for Federal Housing Authority. It's backed by the government. You're getting it at 3.5% interest, which is super low. That's almost free money. And everybody gets one. So I would encourage everyone to use their one. I love multifamily. I'm a multifamily investor. I almost never buy singles anymore. And so with an FHA loan, you can get up to a 4-unit building with that money. So if you can get a 4-unit, and they do require you to live in there for a year, if you're single or you have a nimble family that can be moved, I would say go with that all day long. And if the property needs construction, they will give you something called a 203K loan that will come from the bank. And if you plan to do that, you want to make sure that your bank offers both. So the strategy that I love the most is when I purchase the property more cheaply, then I renovate it. And now after I renovate it, it's worth a lot more. And then I go refinance and pull the cash out. Not all of it, but a good chunk. Let me give you a specific example. So there's this house that I bought for $35,000. It was super cheap and really is teeny, not in the best condition. It needed about $70,000 worth of work. It was under 1,000 square feet. So small 2-bedroom house, row house in Philadelphia. And I put about $70,000 into it. And so now I'm all in at $100,000. At that point, I take it to the bank. And just so you know, I use hard money for this process to purchase and for the construction. Then I go to a more traditional bank and I say, hey, bank, I have this property. I added value to it. Let me get a loan, right? They say, okay. They send an appraiser out. The appraiser appraises property for $212,000. Now, mind you, all it cost me was $100,000 and it wasn't even my money. So at that point, what I do is I decided to keep the property and not sell it, right? Even though it's worth $212,000, I wanted to keep it because once you sell it, you don't get the wealth building part of it. And we could talk about that. Everyone's talking about building wealth, but you can't build wealth flipping houses. You can make money, and which is great, but you can't build wealth. So what I did was I decided to keep the house. The bank is willing to give me 75% of the value of the property. So that came out to about 165 or so. So I was able to pay back the hard money lender $100,000. Then I was able to keep the rest for myself. So I got paid to pick up this rental property. And then now I have this chunk of cash. Next time I might not have to get a loan because I can use this chunk of cash to pay off the next one. Now you're thinking, okay, I have this debt. I have to pay off this loan. Yeah, your tenants pay it off. When they pay their rent and you pay your mortgage, they are paying off the debt on the property and you are able to get your monthly cash flow. So you're able to get that cash out up front. You're able to get your monthly cash flow and you're able to get the long-term equity. That is where the wealth is built. So that property that was appraised at 212, that neighborhood right now, houses are going for about 275. And I haven't done any extra work, nothing to it. And that's over what, a 3-year period. So this is what we mean by passive income, making money when you're sleeping.
So for someone getting started, what are some of the things that they can do so that they don't over leverage debt? Especially like we're officially in a recession, right? People have to be mindful about how much debt they take on. What are some of the advice that you have?
So one, you have to know how to run your numbers. That's the main thing, right? It doesn't matter if we're in a recession. As a matter of fact, the recession is one of the best times to get started and build wealth. Things are going to go on sale and the people who are prepared are going to benefit from it. So get prepared. Many millionaires are created in a recession, and that's going to be true this time around. So you have to know your numbers. You can get good deals whether the market's up or down. You just have to know your numbers. So one simple formula is what I call the 65% rule. You want to make sure that your purchase and your renovation costs stay under 65%. This is going to ensure that you are not over leveraged, because we know the banks will on average give us 75% of the value of the property when we go to get a loan with them. So if we stay under 65%, we know that we're going to get all of our money back from the bank. Plus, we are going to have some room there to cover those closing costs, holding costs, things like that. So you just have to know your numbers and then make sure your debt is always making money for you. There's a 1% rule that I use for rents, because that's how you're going to make your monthly cash. So 1% rule says if I'm going to take a loan for $100,000, I need to collect at least 1% in rent to be able to service and cover that debt. And your bank won't let you get the loan without this anyway. They're going to say the same thing. It's called debt service coverage. And really, you want to be at like a 1.2 or 1.4. So let's say you have a house and the mortgage is $100,000 a month. You want to get about $1,200, a minimum of $1,000, but you'll have more cash flow if you have $1,200 or $1,400. And that's how you can protect yourself and know that you're going to be making money on any debt that you do take on.
So you started investing 15 years ago, which was around the last recession.
Yes, so I'll answer it this way. In my mind, I'm like, that was a horrible time to get started, right? 2007, I know nothing about real estate investing. Plus, that was equivalent to where we are now, where things are at the top and everything's about to drop. It was not a good time. It was not hindsight and foresight. It was a horrible time to buy, because that house that I bought for $123,000, I don't know, 2 years later, it was worth about $80,000. And tons of my neighbors were foreclosing. But what that did was, again, we got to take the lesson. We got to be better and not bitter. Now, I'm not scared of the recession. I'm going to make a killing during the recession, and all of my students will as well, because I went through it. I understand it. I know what to look for. I know how to survive it. I was able to keep that property, even though it went underwater. I learned what to do to keep it running, to keep the mortgage paid, to keep me out of foreclosure. It wasn't hard. It wasn't painful. It was just, I did what I needed to do. But now I know how to navigate it. Now I know what to look for. So I would definitely encourage anyone who's thinking about getting started now. It's definitely okay to start, but make sure you have someone who's been through it already to guide you through that process. Otherwise, you'll do what I did, because that wasn't a good idea.
Do you still own that property today?
I literally just sold it like 2 years ago. I cried. I went down there and cried when I sold it. It's my first baby. But this is what I tell my students all the time. I didn't want to sell it because it's my first. It's nothing like your first. And at the same time, we have to get out of our feelings and get into the numbers. And so the numbers, it was very clear that I shouldn't keep it. The only reason why I didn't keep it was because it was in a community with an HOA. I talk about that all the time. HOAs are not the best place. HOA communities are not a great place to get an investment property for many reasons. The issue with this community was when I bought it when the community was brand new. So my HOA fees were around $70. Over the years, they added all these amenities, a park and a swimming pool, and they started doing your trash and your water, cutting your lawn. Then it became like $400 a month. It was insane. Plus, they used to pay our water and sewer as a part of HOA fees. The HOA went bankrupt because they weren't charging enough. And then, so they made us pay $400. Plus, we had to pay our own water and sewer. It killed my cash flow. And I had tons of equity in the property. And it was better for me to take that equity, cash it now before the market dropped again, than to ride that one out. And just for anyone who doesn't understand equity, equity is the difference between what you owe and what the property is worth. So my loan, I paid it off so much, it was maybe at $40,000, and the property was worth about $150,000. So I had the difference between the two numbers. That's my money, my equity. I was able to pull that out, and I went and bought 2 multifamily properties in Philadelphia with that money, using something called a 1031 exchange. I know this is more high level conversation, but a 1031 exchange allows you to sell a property, not pay capital gains tax on it, because capital gains tax is high. And I can do that if I take that cash and buy more real estate with it. So that's what I did.
We've had a couple of guests on the show talk about the 1031 exchange, but I think sometimes you have to hear about something a few times before you actually start taking action on it. And so just talk to us more about how you're able to continue to buy properties without paying taxes with the 1031 exchange.
Sure. So essentially what it is, it's a tax loophole. Legal is totally legal. It's a tax loophole that was created to help real estate professionals save money, right? Stimulate the economy. So you have someone, I'll call them a 1031 concierge or a 1031 intermediary. You have to hire this person. They have been trained by the government to complete this process. I believe on average, I'm paying like $700 to the person. It's a one-time flat fee. For example, with this particular sale, when I go to the closing table, this company, they get all the money. So they got the $110,000. After fees, it was more like 100,000, right? They get the $100,000. I don't, because if it ever touches my hand, the government says, no deal. We're not giving you a tax break. Because they know that you could take the money and do different things and put it back. So they get the money, they hold it in escrow. Escrow is a fancy term for I'm just holding your money. So they put it in escrow, they hold my money. And then when I found, they give me a very specific amount of days where I have to identify the property and then another timeline for when I have to purchase it. So that first list, you have to give them like a list of properties that you're considering. Make sure, and this is how you get through the process, because you could totally have those days pass and not have a property and you got to pay taxes. So make sure that when you are starting your 1031 exchange, you already have a property identified, 2 or 3 possibly identified. And that's what I did. I give them a full list just in case there are other options. But then I pick the property. I say, hey, intermediary, I'm ready to buy a property. They say, cool. I go to the closing table. They bring the money. I don't have to bring the money to the table. So they use that cash to help me purchase the property. And then everything's normal. After that, there's a form that they give you to give to your accountant to prove that you did this process the right way, and you're good to go, and you don't have to pay taxes. You can do it over and over. You don't have to pay taxes until you sell that property. So I guess I'll never be selling it then because I don't want to pay taxes.
Today, how many units do you own?
We are getting close to 60 now. After I'm finished, I have 15 units under renovation now, so we'll hit that number when we're done these.
So what has real estate done for your wealth building journey?
Do we have enough time to talk about that? That's why I started out saying, like, it's so cool that my job, what I do, helps to build wealth for my family. And I'm able to share that with others, whether I'm just inspiring them by listening, being on podcasts like this, or you come under my wing and I teach you in one of my classes or courses. It's a game changer. It really is. So anybody who wants to be a millionaire, it's really the fastest way to get your net worth to $1 million. That's a game changer for somebody who has come from where I've come from. I grew up in a very rough neighborhood in DC, not the DC people walk around now walking their dogs in the middle of the night. You couldn't walk your dog in the middle. You couldn't walk your dog during the day in the neighborhood that I grew up in. And my mom coming from Trinidad, my dad, a country boy from Emporia, Virginia. Nobody's ever heard of that place. Very, very humble beginnings. And it's just given me a lot of freedom and time and options. I did a post on my Instagram page just talking about how the ultimate flex is time and options. When you can spend your time the way you want to, and you have options that you can do this or that, you get to choose. You get to be in control of that. I think that passion and desire really came from me working on a job that really put a lot of restraints on my time. And I was making good money, but I couldn't go where I wanted to go. I had to work the night shift when they said. I had to work the weekends when they said. I had to not participate in family events when they said. This is my life, but they get to control everything. And then when I lost my mother and father, that feeling got even more intense for me. It's like, okay, I'm on the clock and I get one shot at this. I get one shot to live my life the way that I want to. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. And this has helped me do it. I like to look at every single property that I invest in as a piggy bank. I want to clear all misconceptions. Real estate investing is not get rich quick, but it is get rich for sure. And so what I mean by that is you do a deal today and you can make some money from it. but you're not going to be uber wealthy from one deal. But when you build out your portfolio, and then when you play the long game, the wealth is in the long game. So each of these properties, they are a piggy bank for me and my family. Each and every property that I've picked up, it has or will make me six figures. Each and every one of them. Just think about those, do those numbers, right? Each and every one of them already has, because I already have buildings that I've bought even 4 years ago that have already made me six figures, added six figures to my net worth. So each and every property is a piggy bank. And what happens is I have this piggy bank, and every month my tenant puts money into it. Not me, my tenant puts money into that piggy bank every single month. And myself and my family gets to reap the benefit. They benefit because they get a beautiful home to live in, a beautiful, safe home. I am a good landlord. You call me, you pay your rent on time, you better leave when you call me. I'm fixing it on the spot. It's really important. So they get something out of it. My family gets something out of it. It's a win-win situation. And at the end of the day, after those deposits are made in that piggy bank, whether it's a 10-year loan, 15, 20-year loan, I don't have any 30-year loans because that's my preference. But after that 15-year period, and guess what? 15 years is going to pass anyway. You might as well get some money while you're at it, right? So after those 15 years, they pay off that full loan. And now I have a building worth $600,000 with no debt on it, $800,000 with no debt on it. $1 million building, I have a handful of them, many of them, probably at least 8 now that I can foresee because of the neighborhoods they're in, will be worth $1 million. And somebody else paid it all off. I want to be fully transparent. The process is not necessarily super easy, and you're going to deal with all kinds of things, bad deals, bad contractors, bad decisions that you made. But at the end of the day, if you play that long game, it all adds up, and it adds up in your favor in a major way.
I love what you said about playing the long game and holding onto properties for a long time. Recently, I visited Portugal and we went to the highest point in Lisbon. And so one of
Oh,
the
I've been
questions,
there. I love it.
and so I kept asking people like, hey, so how much does it cost to buy property here? And everyone said the same thing. People are not selling them. They're holding on to them. They're going to pass it down to their families. It's basically priceless.
Yeah, that's one of the things that not enough people in America and in our community get, because they sell grandma's house all the time. And it's unfortunate and it's heartbreaking for me, to be honest, because we have wealth. Our ancestors, our parents, grandparents take time to do their best to build it. And then we or the next generation sells it off. And so what we have to remember is while we're building whatever it is that we build, while we are building it, make sure we're teaching someone else, whether it's a child, if you don't have children, niece or nephew, make sure that somebody knows how to keep and protect what you built. Because you have $1 million homes in DC that because of lack of education, family members are selling them for 200,000. They're like, yeah, I got 200,000. Oh, you just gave up 800,000. And there are ways, if you are educated, there are ways where you could take a property like that, pull cash from it now, still own it, make monthly cash on it, and then that $1 million building will be worth $1.5 million if you know how to do it. So I would encourage everybody to get educated, because this is something that everybody needs to know. Everybody needs to invest in real estate. Real estate investing is for everybody. Not doing it full time like me. It's a whole different world, but everybody can buy one a year. Everybody can buy one every other year, and it still adds up in a major way.
So for anyone watching or listening, wanting to get started, can you share a few steps that they can take to start on their wealth building journey through real estate?
Yeah, absolutely. So when individuals are interested in investing in real estate, the first thing they do, they just start looking at properties. They're just like on their phones. But what you want to do, if you're serious, you want to get the funding first. You want to get clear on your funding source. So whether you have a private money lender, and private money is a regular person like you and I who has some cash set aside, you'll be surprised at the people who have chunks of cash set aside. You can get a private money lender. You can use your own money if you do have it. And when I say your own money, not just, pay $100,000 house in cash, but do you have that it's a 20% down payment. I don't recommend anyone go that route. You really don't have to anymore, but you can, right? I tell people, I don't care how you do it, just get started. That's the most important thing, is to just get started. Or you can go to your bank and get the FHA loan that I was talking about, or you can go to the hard money lender and let them put down 75% of the purchase and 100% of construction. So get your funding. Then they typically give you a letter saying, hey, this is the amount of money that we're willing to give to you. So from there, now you can shop. So you can work with a realtor to find deals. You can find off-market deals. There's still houses on Craigslist. People are still selling homes there. You can find it there. There's so many places to find property. So then you identify your property. You can use those formulas that I just mentioned. You want to make sure you run your numbers. And this is one of the common mistakes that a lot of people make, is when they run their numbers, they just go, oh, this is just price. This is the rehab price. These are my profits. No, you got to include your carrying costs. You got to pay utilities the whole time you're doing this renovation. You have to pay for grass to get cut and snow to get shoveled. You got to pay for realtor's fees if you're going to work with a realtor. You got to pay your title company. So all these fees add up. So you want to make sure you take that into account, because that'll, that can really eat away at your profits. And then after you factor in all those numbers, you can come away with a number that makes sense.
On the Rents and Gems podcast, you said something, success is not hard, but it's actually being mediocre or average that's easy.
Yep.
Can you elaborate on that, it being easy?
So what I said was that success is not hard. It's just that being mediocre and average is easy. Success leaves clues. And now that we are in the information age, success is at our fingertips. This information that you're getting on this podcast right now wasn't available to you some years ago. It's super easy. The information is there. We all have the same 24 hours in a day. The only difference is how we spend our 24 hours in a day. The difference is our vision, how big we think, because the same energy that it takes to make $100,000, you can make $1 million with that same energy and same time. Trust me, I know, I've done both. So here's the thing. When I say that being mediocre and average is easy, what I mean is that at the end of the day, when you've worked your 9 to 5, and I know what that's like, I used to do that, clock in, clock out. Most of us, we go home, we watch TV. On the way home, we're listening to music, whatever it is you like to listen to, or we're listening to some talk radio show. It's gossip, but instead we could turn our cars into a university and be educating ourselves on the way. And if your kids are in the back, oh my God, that's a bonus. They're getting that knowledge early, right? Because it's never too early to learn about investing, stocks, financial literacy, right? Because the way that we show up as adults, we get those messages very, very early as kids. Then when you get home, you could be working on another business. You could be learning from someone, taking a course, it's so many things that you could be doing. We are addicted to the education and allergic to the execution, right? So once you do both of those, your goals become a reality. But instead, many of us, we go to work, listen to the radio, we bop along in our cars, then we come home and we know everything that's going on what's the shows out now? I don't know, because I don't watch it. What is it? Power, Empire, whatever folks are watching. I've never seen any of those shows. When I do sit down in the evening and have dinner with my husband, we'll watch TV for maybe 30 minutes to an hour. I honestly can't tolerate a whole lot more than that, just because my mind is just like, I could be doing something else with my time, whether that's working or self-care, just having some quiet time, reading a book. We'll sit down. We are watching Shark Tank. We're watching, there's a TV network called AWE, A Wealth of Entertainment. These are shows like Buying Private Jets and Yacht Club, all these things. We're taking in all this information, so we know that it's possible for them, it's possible for us. I could say so much about that, but that's what I mean. It's about the choice. It's easy to just chill. That's the difference between whether we knock these goals out the park or we don't.
Love it. So Attiyah, I always end the interview with a round of rapid fire questions. Can you tell me about a book that changed your perspective on life?
Sure. I would say No More Mondays by Dan Miller. I read that book when I was still working a job. I was at NBC News. And what it did for me is it really helped me to understand how there is no security in job security and how we have to have a backup plan and how we really should, the premise of no more Mondays is because Mondays is supposed to be a dreaded day. But if you love what you do, you don't feel that dread. And so, how important it is to be happy and passionate and excited about what you're doing.
What's one life lesson you've learned the hard way?
Mentorship. So they say you should learn from your mistakes, but the truth is the mistakes don't have to be yours. Getting a good mentor helps you to skip steps.
What's the best investment in yourself you've made so far?
Mentorship. There's one coach in particular, and I'll call her by name, Darnell Jervey Harmon. She is a business ninja.
Mm.
And because of her, I got to 6 figures under her mentorship and I got to 7 under her mentorship. I have a lot of different mentors at this point for different reasons because everyone has their specialty, but I got to give her her flowers.
Fill in the blank in 3 words or less. Money to me is
a resource.
What do you want your legacy to be?
Oh, so I'll tell you, after you make a certain amount of money, the money doesn't excite you the way that it used to. What's most important for me is, and what I find the most joy in, is helping other people. It's just something about when you change somebody else's life. I know that the work that I'm doing in my mentorship, it will be felt for generations, even when I'm no longer here.
Attiyah, it's been an amazing interview. Please tell the dreamers where they can find you.
Yes, so 2 places. Immediately, you can find me on Instagram at Attiyah Blair, Attiyaah, and then Blair is Blair. And then in the near future, September 17th through 19th, you can find me at the Real Estate Reset Live. We are going back live. We're doing it up big. I am going to be breaking down how you can get started with real estate investing. And again, everybody should be investing in real estate. So if you go to realestateresetlive.com. You can click the link in my bio on my Facebook page, on my Instagram page. Spouses get to come for free. Real estate investing is better together, so your friends can come for an even deeper discount once you purchase your ticket. Again, there are a lot of people who wanted to invest during the last downturn in the market, and they were too scared to do so, and they lost. They lost the opportunity, but there's another opportunity coming. Don't miss out on it this time. Even during the pandemic, when that pandemic first started, that was a great time because people were scared. When people are running this way, we need to run this way. So September 17th through 19th, we'll be there live in the DMV, giving all the game.
All right, Attiyah, thank you so much.
All right, thank you. My pleasure.